All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Developer's Guide to Jakarta EE11, and greetings from Western Massachusetts. Those of you who know me, I live in New Jersey, but we're here for a few days. The picture you see here is of a sailboat in Newport, Rhode Island, and I took this picture last year because of the sailboat, and it reminded me of Jakarta EE. All right, well, Jakarta EE has an awesome history going back to 1998, where you see on the upper left the Java Professional Edition, and then you can see all the different versions and the different naming conventions that have evolved ever since then. And here we are with Jakarta EE11, that's pretty much on the verge of being released. Hi, I'm Mike. I am a Java champion. And I do all these things that you see there in the brackets. I'm the lead Java Q news editor at InfoQ. Perhaps you've seen my weekly news roundups in the Java space. I do some developer advocate and tech writing for Payara. I'm a director for the Garden State Java user group that has been in continuous operation since 2001. I'm on the leadership council of the Jakarta EE ambassadors, and I'm a committer on the Jakarta NoSQL and Jakarta data specifications. And by the way, I had 33 and a half years with ExxonMobil. I retired in June of last year. And so everything you see above is what I do full time. So it is a passion. All right, so we just briefly went over the evolution of Java EE and Jakarta EE. So I checked that off. But the rest of the objectives, if you all agree, we'll talk about the profiles, how we got here to Jakarta EE11, what's new, and an overview of the updated specs with demos. So I normally do this poll if this was an in-person presentation. However, if you are interested in putting in the chat where you are in this list, I hope not to see the what the heck is Jakarta EE, because this is a Jakarta EE conference. So anyway, if you want to do that, please go ahead and do. And let's take a look at the profiles. There are three profiles. I'm sure we've heard references to this all day. You have the platform, the web profile, and the core profile. We'll go over those quickly. The platform itself defines a standard for hosting all of the Jakarta EE applications. There are 42 specifications in the ecosystem. However, only 30 are part of the platform. And the other 12 are probably, due to them being deprecated, maybe outdated, those kinds of things. But that's where we are with those specs. So this is designed for those who want to use all the specifications in the platform. And you can see here in blue all the new specs. I'm going to list them later anyway. But then, as we all know, we've heard all day, we do have a new spec with Jakarta Data 1.0. We'll talk more about that in a bit. The web profile is pretty much just a subset of the platform, and for obvious reasons. It's for web technologies to do that kind of work. All right, again, these are the specs. There are 23 in there, and Jakarta Data is also in that profile as well. And last but not least is the core profile. And this is another subset of the platform targeting just smaller runtimes for microservices applications and those kinds of things. And this was introduced in Jakarta EE10 2 years ago. And those are the 7 specs that you see there. All right. So that takes care of the profiles. So how did we get here over the past year plus? The first milestone release was available a year ago. The second and third milestones were released in early and late April, respectively. And the fourth milestone was released in June. And then, of course, the final GA release, we're waiting on that. And you've heard many of discussion about why with the TCK refactoring and all that I think this is a great investment on time for future releases of Jakarta EE. All right, the current status. There are 16 specs that have been updated, and all of them have passed their respective release reviews earlier this year. The focus right now is to modernize and restructure the TCK. And right now, any day now, I believe tomorrow is the last day of voting, if I'm not mistaken, to vote on the core profile. And then the platform and web profiles, those releases will probably happen, in the first quarter, maybe the first month of 2025, but that's all contingent upon how the upgrades go. There was some discussion about App Client, which you may have heard earlier today, which is part of this discussion that I've seen on the mailing list. Okay, let's go. What's new? All right, new specifications. Jakarta data, of course, but you might be scratching your head and saying, what the heck is this JWT bridge? And I know it's been mentioned earlier today, but in case you missed it, I will talk about it. There will be the removal of the legacy managed bean annotation and references to to the Java Security Manager have been removed. Now, this was deprecated in JDK 17, and there is a new JEP targeted for Java 24, will permanently disable that security manager. And that's JEP 486 for anybody who wants to look that up. So this is the next step in getting that finally removed from the Java ecosystem. All right, CDI Lite. And it took me a while to figure out what the heck that meant because it's never mentioned on the Jakarta EE website. But basically it is a way to split out the integration related to the specification in the document. So, and this is intended to solve some circular dependency problems. So you can see the difference between CDI 3, which is Jakarta EE 10, and CDI 4.0, which is for Jakarta EE 11. And also, too, the optional features that are in those three specs are now, you won't be able to implement or not implement those or the optional features themselves. All right, support for Java records in expression language, in persistence, and in validation. Of course, Java records were final in JDK 16, and support for virtual threads in concurrency, which makes obvious sense since Java 21, there was the final version of virtual threads there. All right, and there's been some initial work on the interoperability between the MicroProfile JWT authentication and Jakarta Security specs. We'll talk more about that. All right, so what's new? All right, so I'm just listing these here. There was the Jakarta Faces 4.1. They initially wanted to do a 5.0, but they felt they didn't have enough, or at least adequate time to do a full-blown, release 5.0 with breaking changes. So they decided to just do a 4.1. So that's that, and then the rest of those specs. All right. This is normally where I would stop myself from talking fast and asking questions if this was an in-person presentation, but I want to see how many people know who this is. I know some of the older folks would know, but put that in the chat if you know who it is. All right, the demonstrations I'm going to have today are going to be in Payara Server or Payara Micro, and also Payara Cloud. That's been released about 2 years ago. And there's a free 15-day trial if you're interested. Just check that out on the website. All right, so what's this JWT bridge? All right, so it is a collaboration between the two working groups. And this allows developers to use Jakarta Security to build on the MicroProfile JWT authentication for seamless integrations. And I know this came up about a year ago or so. And, for me, about having new specs in Jakarta from MicroProfile. So I probably yelled a little bit too much. I don't know. But in any event, I think this is a great thing because this is, working together with the two working groups for that. So there'll be more about that. So this is still a work in progress. And I heard two things. This will be targeted for MicroProfile 7.1, or I heard Venna say earlier today, probably 8.0, if I heard that correctly. So you see the new spec there and the Jakarta Security and the JWT authentication all work together for that to build more secure, robust applications. All right, in the JWT bridge, there is a new annotation, JWT authentication mechanism definition, which, very short word there. Thankfully for code completion in IntelliJ. And then the idea is to move the optional section of MicroProfile JWT to the new bridge spec along with the TCK. And this is what the annotation looks like. Has parameters that, obviously have to do with using JSON web tokens. So the public key, your issuers, and all these kinds of things. So it's my goal to have a working demo. It's not ready yet, but look for that at some point. And I think this will be fun to try to work with that and get something going. All right, and just for completeness, MicroProfile 7 was released in August of this year. And these are the core specs on the left, and then the standalone specs on the right. Now, some of them have been around, always in the standalone spec, like reactive messaging, the streams operators, context propagation. Over the years, you had long-running actions, which is LRA, GraphQL. And then the biggest change was the metrics spec, which went from the core specifications over to standalone. And I know Emily Zhang mentioned this earlier today, and I think a lot of people are moving over to micrometer. You have micrometer metrics, micrometer tracing. And if you notice, there's open tracing in the standalone specs. With the release of MicroProfile 6, open tracing moved over there in favor of telemetry, which is now at version 2.0 on the left. So, and then you see the Jakarta EE 10 specifications or the core profile for that. And this has a history going back to MicroProfile 1.0, in which the 3 original JSR related specs, so going back to Java EE, and this is 2016, you had the CDI, you had Java API for JSON processing, and the Java API for RESTful web services. So, and this is how everything evolved into supporting the core profile, because all those new specs as they're known today are in that core profile. All right. All right, Jakarta annotations. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly. These slides will be available. And along, I have a GitHub repository for you to, experiment, and then send me feedback, say something like slap me around and say, oh, you silly, you did this wrong or whatever. I appreciate any feedback. So annotations is a collection of annotations that could be used all across any of the Jakarta EE ecosystem. And what's new is removal of the managed themes annotation. And the Current version for 11 is 3.0, and Glassfish 8 milestone 3 is the compatible implementation. Jakarta Authentication is essentially a low-level SPI for authentication modules. So this is obviously how you would authenticate a user. This works hand in hand with Jakarta Security. So you have all the credentials, the validation, and then you pass that identity to the container. All right, what's new is minor updates to support the overall goal of Jakarta Security. Clarifications around state and concurrency and references to Security Manager have been removed. The current version is 3.1, and there's 2 compatible implementations, which is Glassfish 8 milestone 6 and Eclipse Epiciro 3.1. Authorization, another spec that is related to Jakarta Security. So obviously you have authentication, and then once you pass your authentication, now you need to ensure those users are properly authorized for various parts of an application. So basically this involves permissions, usually a role-based type of setup, right? And that's what how we'd use that there. All right, what's new is future-proofing the spec and make it more suitable for cloud deployments. All right, this is achieved by adding an API for programmatically registering policy providers. Okay, and this replaces the policy class that's been deprecated. And there's a standardization for the context ID in servlet containers. It's been a long day for me too, even. So also too, several new convenience methods to make the API easier to use. And again, references to Security Manager have been removed. Current version is 3.0, and Glassfish 8 milestone 5 and Eclipse Exousia, that's how you pronounce it, 3.0 milestone 3. Concurrency provides a mechanism for using concurrency from application components. Okay, this obviously involves using virtual threads. And I mentioned that here, integration with Java 21. And there's support for the Java Flow class and the MicroProfile reactive streams operators and the MicroProfile context propagation specs. All right, in what's new there is replacing more features from Enterprise Java Beans. The schedule annotation I know has been replaced. Last I heard, and this could be a little off on this, there is the lock annotation, which I don't think was implemented yet, but somebody like Arjan Times would be able to answer that question more, better than me. There's also an intent to become more CDI centric, and by adding injection default resources, right, from managed executor service and context service interfaces. Current version is 3.1, and the compatible implementation is Open Liberty 24.6-beta. So this is the June version. So that's how far back, this was actually past their release review. All right, CDI, which we use all the time. I mean, who hasn't used the inject annotation? But this specifies a means for obtaining objects to maximize reusability, testability, and so on, blah, blah, blah. So, and then there's new methods to the Bean configurer interface for applying decorators and support for priority annotation on producers. All right, current version is 4.1, and Weld, which has been, a long time compatible implementation of CDI. Their version 6 beta 1 is that compatible implementation. All right, Jakarta data, and this will come up to our first demo. Now you've heard a lot about Jakarta data, but I'm going to make it fun. All right, with the application, you'll see that in a minute. All right. This provides an API that allows easy access to database technologies There's support for relational databases and NoSQL databases. And then there's heavy use of the repository interface, which I know you saw in Otavio and Nathan's talk earlier today. And what's new is support for CDI extensions, a new basic repository interface to complement the other that are there. So the data repository is empty. Basic has some basic different find methods, those kinds of things. And you saw the life cycle annotations of insert, update, delete, and save. And there's new insert and update methods in the CRUD repository interface. All right, there's the new Jakarta data query language, which, as you heard earlier today, is a subset of the Jakarta Persistence query language. And the current version is 1.0, it's probably a service release, I think, of 1.01. But Open Liberty was one of the first to provide a compatible implementation, and that goes to their June release of Open Liberty. And Hibernate ORM 6.6, which only came out about 2 months ago, if I'm not mistaken. So those are the two implementations for that. And we got a live demo. So, all right. So just go over some of these real quick. You'll be able to see, clone the repository at your leisure. But just to give you an idea, first of all, I'm a craft beer enthusiast. For those who don't know me well, all right. So I have this, beer application, and it models a beer collection. This is NoSQL or MongoDB. So there's a beer repository, beer resources. So you see all the different ways you can post, you can get, and all those HTTP verbs and endpoints. And the same thing with the brewer. Just real quick, the beer class, obviously, I hope you can see that too. Oops, I opened the wrong one here. There we go. You have the ID, you have the name of the beer, the beer type, the brewer ID, and the ABV of that particular beer. And the brewer itself, we model of course, you have the ID, you have the name, and just the city and the state. Just simple enough. All right. So let's run this. And I have Pyaris server. This is alpha 2 of their version 7, which just came out like 2-3 weeks ago. So I have our data here. Gonna launch it. All right, and then there we go. So I made all these demos with the same index HTML to look the same, just with the verbiage, relative to that particular spec demo. So here's the list of the databases. I have MongoDB running in the background already, and you can see some of the stuff here. So you can see here I have a Flemington Pumpkin Ale. I live in Flemington, New Jersey, but the brewer, oops, got rid of that R. I don't want the 3. There we go. All right, the brewer related to that is Redlich Brewing Company, which obviously is not a real brewing company. It is a retirement goal. How's that sound? In any event, yeah, so you have that in all these different brewers here. So what can you do with this? So you can say, all right, let's get the third brewer. Same thing with the beers, right? I'd say the second one here, all right? That kind of thing. Now you can add. We're going to use our scripts. All right, so I'm going to just do a curl command here, and I'm going to add a Redlich Brewing Company again, but instead of Flemington, New Jersey, it's going to be in New Orleans. So we'll add that in there, and then I'm going to make a Mardi Gras stat. Sounds good to me. And it's some kind of high ABV. So we'll just run that, which is here, and then, oops, you didn't see that. Okay. All right, so you can see that it completed, and then if we, as the brewer, right? we scroll down, you'll see the new one here, New Orleans, right? And then you'll see in the BR2 itself, I'm gonna hide this thing. Hide video panel. That's it. It's not hiding though. All right. And if you look here, you'll see down here the New Orleans Mardi Gras step. All right, we want to delete stuff now. All right, we'll do a post, and that's our delete script. And it doesn't give a response, but if we refresh, you'll see those are gone. Yeah, it's gone. All right. So yeah, so that's pretty much it on that. I don't have an update on that yet. That's something to add at some point. So again, this is on my GitHub. Please check that out and provide feedback. So, all right. So let's see. It's the expression language. This is one I've never had a chance to really mess around with, but it'd be nice to give this a try at some point. So this is a simple language to meet the needs of presentation layer and web applications, essentially. All right. So what's new? A Java.desktop module that's no longer required at runtime, and a new length property that will support arrays. Current version is 6, and Apache Tomcat 11, milestone 18 is the compatible implementation. And while I'm thinking about it, Apache Tomcat 11, the GA was released within the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that's been around a long time too, by the way. I remember playing around with really early versions of Apache Tomcat. So Jakarta Faces, it's a model view controller framework for building just UI interfaces. By the way, there's a Jakarta MVC specification that is part of the ecosystem. It's not on the platform. And along with that was Jakarta NoSQL. Just as a side note here, hopefully these will be part of the Jakarta EE 12. They didn't pass the release reviews this year, so we'll give it a shot for 12. This is formerly known as Jakarta Server Faces, and then going back to the old days, JSF or Java Server Faces, right? And what's new is new firing events for CDI for these annotations that you see listed here, and a deprecation of the pre-destroy custom scope event and the post-construct custom scope event classes. Current version is 4.1, and compatible implementations are Glassfish 8, milestone 6, and Eclipse Mahara 4.1.1. All right, interceptors. There's another spec I haven't had a chance to really get a chance to experiment with, but I know Ottavio talked about interceptors in Jakarta data. So this is a way to interpose on business method invocations and specific events, such as lifecycle, all right, and timeout events. And then, as we saw, those new annotations are, save and delete are lifecycle events. So that makes sense. And there's an updated set of dependencies to align with Jakarta EE 11, and a new standard overloaded get interceptor bindings method that was added to the invocation context interface. All right, 2.2 is the latest version, and Weld 6 beta 1 is the compatible implementation. All right, Jakarta Pages. All right, formerly known as Jakarta Server Pages, so they shortened it JSP, right? Java Server Pages going back a number of years. And we went back and looked at that flow chart from all the different versions of Java EE and Jakarta EE. You'll see that was one of the early ones as well. All right, so this is a template engine, right, for web apps. And then, with custom tags, expression language, and, I'm sure all of us have used that in some way, and is used quite a bit with Jakarta Servlet. All right, there's a new error or an updated error data class that supports the Jakarta Servlet constant field values, and there's a couple of them right there. And so all code deprecated as of Jakarta Server Pages 3.1 have been removed. So, all right, current version is 4, and Apache Tomcat milestone 20, version 11 is the compatible implementation. And I think there were 21 or 22 milestones before 11 was released by the Apache team. All right, Jakarta Persistence. Gavin King had a great presentation earlier today and talking about that, right? This goes back to JPA, Java Persistence Architecture. All right, and I think a lot of a lot of people still sort of mix that JPA versus Jakarta Persistence. Like JPA has been around a long time, right? So this is a way to manage persistence and object relational mapping. So we've all used Hibernate in the past, that kind of thing. So that's what this is all about. There are so many new features in this, but this would take me an hour just to go through them all. But the big one, of course, is support for Java records. And then numerous new methods added to different classes, like you see there, criteria query, entity manager, and so forth, right? And then Gavin had posted a blog post on the Hibernate website about migrating over to java.time API and not using calendar anymore. And so that's all been deprecated that you can see there. The calendar, Java util date, and timestamp. So if you go find that, it's a good read, and and he explains it real well. And then also removing deprecated code from Jakarta Servlet 3.1. All right, 3.2 is the latest version. Hibernate ORM 7 Alpha 2 is the compatible implementation, along with Eclipse Link 5 Beta 2. All right, RESTful web service. All right, we've all used REST. We've all used endpoints, right? We saw some of that in the example. All right, so this is, follows the representational state transfer architectural pattern. Been around a long time, right? There's a new convenience method contains header string. And then also, I have an example of this, the get matched resource template added to the URI info interface to obtain the template for the current URI request. Additional TCK tests and the managed bean annotation has been removed. All right, version 4 is the latest. REST Easy 7 Alpha 1 and Eclipse Jersey 4 Milestone 1, and both of these have been around a long time as a compatible implementation. So I have a quick demo on that. It's nothing really exciting, but it's, gives you an idea how to use this thing. So let's close out some of this. All right, where's REST? Here it is. Nothing exciting, but I'll show you how you use the new method. And I think it was in resource. Oops. Oh yeah, right here. So it's the UR info. I believe that gets injected. So get resource template. So you'll see the output where it says matched resource template. And yes, the UR info is injected as a context. And if we go over to, all right, and close out Jakarta data, go to REST. REST. Launch that. All right, so then there's the REST endpoint there. Again, nothing exciting here, but you'll see that it says matched resource template, and it's basically that second REST endpoint right there. So it's REST. So trying to tell me something, I guess. Okay, where are we here? How am I doing on time? I got a couple minutes left here. All right. All right, Jakarta Security. I'm going to actually go when I do the demo. I'm going to do that at the end. For some reason in Alpha 1 of Payara, the application runs, but I get a blank in Alpha 2, and I have questioned it on that, but should be it's interesting. Well, we've all seen, know about Jakarta Security. It's a standard for creating secure applications, right? All right, what's new? The multiple authentication mechanisms, that's like HTTP, basic, something like this, right? Qualifiers for built-in authentication mechanisms and references to Security Manager have been removed. Current version is 4. The implementations are Glassfish 8, Milestone 6, and Eclipse Soteria 4.0. We'll go to the demo at the end. Servlet, right? I mentioned Servlet already. It basically handles HTTP requests and responses. New codes are added to here. Let's see. The codes are like 301 moved permanently, 302 found, 303 see other. Right, that's just some of the new codes that are there. And then the constants to support them. And then references to Security Manager class have been removed. Tomcat, has been, I think, a long time, provided a long time implementations of their various, versions of Servlet. And then, so that's the Milestone 20 release. Validation. All right, you've seen some of that earlier today. Basically is a way to, validate various data in your application. And it's formerly known as Jakarta Bean Validation. I know the endpoint is still bean-validation when you go look for it on the Jakarta EE spec website. But yeah, so that's been renamed as well. There's support for Java records, and the dependencies for Jakarta EE 11 have been updated. Current version is 3.1, and the compatible implementation is Hibernate Validator 8.0.1. And they have a quick demo there. To our REST validation. Again, nothing too exciting. Maybe little by little, I'll try to come up with some more meaningful applications. User record. So I have the original user, but I'm using a record instead of a user class. And let's see, so then the resource, and you can see the validate here using record. I even have it for, well, the original user, and then user record. So I'm using that one to do the string build, which is mentioned here. So when we go to our app, validation, launch that. Okay. And here I put in some stuff here that the name is null, which is not allowed. Working equals true. Okay. About me, Java champion. Age 13, which, obviously maybe factor of 5, more than that. And my email is just Mike. So you'll see here, email is not a valid format. Age should be not less than 18. So these are the different validations, which I should have showed you in my example. And it says name must not be null. So this is this is using the record instead of a regular class. All right. Let's see. All right, and then last but not least is Jakarta WebSocket. It's an API for client and server endpoints. Okay. Basically what's new is clarifying the responsibilities for sending ping and pong messages. I like that. So again, I can obviously tell that this is a spec I have not really wrapped my arms around yet. So then what's new is a clarifying behavior of the max message size attribute. All right, and then references to Security Manager. And then you have 2 compatible implementations, which are Tomcat 11 Milestone 20 and Eclipse Tyrus 2.2 milestone 1. So that's that. So I'm going to actually get out of this. Let's see. I have to do. I've had trouble in the past running both Payara server and trying to run micro. So we'll just take care of that real quick. And then 7 alpha 2. And we'll go. Okay. I should stop that in a few seconds. There we go. Now we'll go here, and I think we have, sorry, yeah, we've got, we compiled it. So we'll just start our script, which, yeah. Actually, this may not work now that I think about it. But we'll see. One of the new things was this in memory. Yeah, I can't think of the name at the moment, but I'll open that up in a second. That's an artifact of something different, but it runs. Okay, so we still have it. All right. And the host. Uh-oh. I thought it was running. Yeah, it should be localhost. Okay, well, it's not running, but probably because it is using something new, and I thought I tested. But let's take a look anyway. So here is, we thought about that now. It's amazing what you think of during a presentation as opposed to before. There's a new annotation, and it is called in-memory identity store definition. And I just added this to my original class. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, it actually compiled. So the idea is to use this annotation at the class level, and then provide credentials annotation for one or more users. So you can see here I added myself, and real secure passwords, as you can see, and my wife Rowena, and then she's has admin and user privilege, and then that's it. That's I have not been able to wire that together yet. That will come down the road. So, but that's an idea of something new you can do, and there's some other examples too. So, all right, let's wrap this up because I know you're all tired. So we've done all these things. Resources. Evar has an awesome blog post, hashtag Jakarta EE. It's usually Sundays and then some throughout the week, so you can follow along on the latest and greatest of what's going on in Jakarta EE, plus all his trips around the world. I had the pleasure of having Ivar and Gerrit Grunwald a year ago, September, visit our Garden State Jug for a meeting, so that was awesome. Arjan has this presentation called Boost Performance and Developer Productivity with Jakarta EE11. And what I liked about his is that he grouped the specs into how they're used. Like, so for example, Jakarta Security, authentication, and authorization are grouped as one, and so on. My example applications, I'll have it listed anyway. And also Luis Neto from Payara has a GitHub repo where he uses JWT in different various stages. So he has them in branches in his GitHub. All right. Want to get involved? Yes, please get involved. I like what Tanya Obradovich posted earlier this year, and I thought it would be just awesome to put this there. And there's the tech talk opportunities. Anything you want to do, become part of open source project. If you are part of a user group, perhaps you can adopt a specification. There's a way to do that. So the Garden State group also is part of, has adopted, for obvious reasons, right, Jakarta Data and Jakarta NoSQL. And there are so many people here for which I need to provide a thanks. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but this is 12 folks here that they've contributed to this in some way, shape, or form, and I thank you very much for that. And that's my email, my Twitter handle, and it will be always referred to as Twitter. And then my regular website, my portfolio page, and my GitHub repo. And oh, I want to end with this. This just came out a few days ago on the OmniFish Twitter account. And I think this is just awesome. And I got, Andro gave me permission to post this. And I think this is, the fact that the holidays are coming up, I think this was pretty awesome. So with that, I'll leave you with that. I can also, leave you with the beer and the chocolate image, but let's just leave it there. Questions? Let me see. I have to stop sharing maybe. Oh, no questions. Okay. Did I put everybody to sleep or did everybody leave? But in any event, this has been an awesome day. I look forward to this every year. This is my first time as a speaker, but I served as a program committee chair in the past. And I remember Reza starting this in 2019. And it was actually a 16-hour, I think, or maybe 19 hours back then. So thank you very much. We'll see you somewhere at a conference or a Java user group meeting around the world.